Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the BlackUSA.News morning show. My name is Donnie Glover, and we're here to talk about all that's happening here in the city of Baltimore and our great nation. Today, we have with us the one and only attorney Robert. Good morning.
Good morning, Donnie. How you doing?
You know, we've been on the air about 20 weeks or so with this broadcast, and we've covered a number of items, Mr. DeShield. We've talked about politics. We've talked about business. We've talked about Black Americans, the African Americans, the vaccine, Trump, the Capitol. How's your morning going?
That's great. I'm grateful to be here. A relatively sound mind, I believe. Healthy.
I was thinking about you this weekend, and Giant has bags of Starbucks coffee for $5.99. For $5.99, when they're on sale, you can get a pound of Starbucks coffee, and I think you're spending too much money on coffee.
Well, that's not the first time I've heard that.
Okay,
but I suppose we all have our vices, and
every rabbit's got a habit.
Yeah, and the point that I was trying to make that wasn't lost on all, but apparently a few, was that it from what I understood, from what I knew, it didn't seem to me to be worth the time and trouble that the government seemed to be going to, at least insofar as inquiries upon my clients concerned, Union Baptist Church. It just wasn't. I couldn't see the effort. It just wasn't worth it to me, and that's really what I was trying to say. But some got it, some didn't.
Can we talk just a second? I don't know if as many people need to know the significance of Union Baptist Church.
Well, I don't know the history as well as Reverend Al Hathaway, the current pastor, but certainly Union Baptist is if not the oldest, is certainly one of the oldest congregations in the city of Baltimore, and was home to, I think, the many of the so-called civil rights movements in the city of Baltimore. It started at Union Baptist Church. That's the history that has been conveyed to me by the current pastor, Reverend Al Hathaway.
Absolutely. Home Squad with Purcell and Marion Bascom and Wendell Phillips and Augustus Adair, Lollet. They formed the group to attention to the politics here in the city, and then before it was this Harvey Johnson, and they had something called the Brotherhood. So it's a history that goes back into the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. But long story short, you're at the center of Baltimore's civil rights struggle. Everything happened right there in that block, or much of what happened right in that block. Those couple
pretty
of blocks.
Much. I mean, down the street was the Lily Jackson Mitchell home, I think. And the group that you referred to earlier was actually called the Goon Squad, and that was formed by the late Perrin Mitchell, and I was probably one of the youngest members of. In fact, not probably, I was the youngest member of that group, and was invited in by Perrin only because of our longstanding relationship that went back to the days when he was a sociology professor at Morgan, what was then Morgan State College, now Morgan State University. I was a student.
He was your professor.
He was, and if I had anybody to blame for getting me started down this road, it would be Perrin Mitchell.
We've worked on a couple of campaigns in the past. What does it say when the three major network cartels, you think of the Baltimore Sun, Channel 11, and Channel 13, that's one. You think of Fox, of course, they out there willy-nilly all by themselves. And then you have the Baltimore Brew. And on any given day, they're all going in three different directions. But last week they seem to be targeting their three-pronged fingers all on the Mosbys.
Well, because I don't really know the motivation for that, and nor do I know the basis for the what was reported as the federal investigation. My comment at the time only related to Union Baptist Church, but since you raised the issue, I will offer a bit of speculation. I think individually and together, the Mosbys represent an unchecked threat to a number of organizations and people in the community. If you the Mosby, so far as I know, now let me hasten to add, I've never met Mrs. Mosby. So far as I know, I've never even talked to her. On the other hand, her husband Nick, I've sort of been followed from his days in the council and to the state legislature, and now back as president of the council. And I regard him as someone of very, very highest integrity and honesty, and someone who can be relied upon to at least seek the truth. In my dealings with him in his role as city council president. I believe that together and individually they constitute a threat because they aren't owned by anybody. They aren't beholden to either of the three groups that you mentioned. And that's what makes them a threat. I think that in most other cases, we can find some tie-in between, elected officials and some established white organization of some sort, either real or imagined. I don't really know, but there's no suggestion of any such tie-in as it relates to either of the Mosbys that I'm aware of. And you fear the things that you can't control. That's just human nature. You fear the things you can't control. And so now, whether that's the basis of any actions taken either in the past or that may be taken in the future, I don't know. But that's just my speculation.
We've followed politics, you and I, for a long time. Certainly, and have experienced more than I. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see when a Black elected official is being targeted by the white mainstream media with someone political behind them. Let's take, for example, Thiru Vignarajah. This is a man that ran for state's attorney and lost. He ran for mayor and lost. So from the people of Baltimore's perspective, politically, he has very little, if any, credibility. Yet, after losing 2 citywide elections profoundly, Fox decides to use him as their go-to guy for all issues Baltimore.
And Murdoch is the only one that can answer that question for you. I don't know what Thiru is doing, or what he may have promised to do in the future.
He got caught on Greenmount Avenue after dark on a suspended license, driving in a car without headlights, possibly with a hooker.
Well,
yet this man is okay. That was
I mean, I read those reports like everybody else did. And let me add something, Donnie. I think we've got to be more discerning as a people. In other words, what do I mean by that? I mean, as I said a few moments ago, everybody has issues of some sort. We've gotten to the point where we think it's better to focus upon the person's shortcomings than it is upon their strengths. I prefer to look at the individual's strengths. I prefer to look at those things about the person that I think are consistent with the objectives that I believe in and that I share. If we start looking for dirt, we're gonna find it. I don't care whose bedroom you look in. So
that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Martin O'Malley did no wrong in the city of Baltimore. He eventually ran for president. Yeah, you and I know he locked up 1 in 6 Baltimoreans and thought that Baltimore would support him to be president.
Yeah. And
He did
you
no
know, we're
wrong. He stole furniture from the State House. And I'm sure it cost more than $500 on that note. And this is why I went out there to help former Mayor Sheila Dixon.
yeah.
They raided that woman's house over $500 in gift cards. I thought that was the cruddiest of the cruddy. But the things that we see the white population do, oh, it's nothing. Just like this boy down in Georgia. Did I hear them say he was having a bad day?
Well, let me quickly add one thing. I've heard it over and over again, as you have, that when white folks do it, they get away with it. When black folks do it, we get persecuted. The question is it right or wrong?
Wrong is wrong.
If it's wrong, is wrong, and it has no color. So for black folk whose defense is they did it and got away with it, I'm going to offer my grandmother's admonition. My grandmother's admonition was that 2 wrongs don't make a right.
That's right. Totally agree.
So, and not only that, but more fundamentally and importantly, we as a folk can't follow the lead of white folk.
Oh, I totally agree.
Because one thing, and when I say white folk, I'm not talking about all white folk, but I have to talk about them as a group, because that's how we're looked upon as a group, as a class. The fact that as a group, the one thing that white folks have done or did and continue to do rather well is discriminate against black folk, and discriminate against all non-whites. Let's put it that way. They do that very well. They've proven there's a history that they probably mastered that. So as we go about our lives day to day, it would be completely wrong, in my estimation, to follow that path. We cannot. It's more than we can't do what they do. We can't even seek the same objectives that they seek. Because if you seek the same objective, sooner or later you're going to try to do it the same way. And
Mr. Bob, if somebody is kicking me in my head, all I want them to do is stop kicking me in my head. Now, if I got to kick them in their head to make them stop kicking me in my head, I'm going to kick them in the head.
Yeah, but Donnie, the first thing you do is move your head. When you the bullet to kill,
suppose they got the knee down on my head.
when you get, and I'm not a doctor, but I suspect that if you get shot and you are still conscious, the biggest concern for your life is not the bullet, it's the blood loss. You got to stop the bleeding first. Stop the bleeding, and then you remove the bullet. So the bleeding, what am I saying? As a people, we've got to stop. We've got to take the knees off of our own necks. We've got to stop treating each other in the way that we see others treating us, and then complaining about the way they act. The fact of the matter is, as I've said many, many times, you don't have to be white to be a white supremacist. And unfortunately and regrettably, too many black folks still believe in white supremacy. I see it every day. You see it every day.
What do you mean, Mr. DeShields?
We see it in the choices that we make. When education, most children are going to be educated in the public school system, not in private schools, not in public charter schools. They're going to be educated in public schools. In Baltimore City, that means that most black kids are going to have to rely on public education for their education. Those black folk who have resources and means, however, rather than make the public education system better for all black kids, choose to remove their kids and send them out to Gilman or some other place where the white kids go. The answer is not to throw away those things that are ours. The answer is to make them what they should be if they're not, if we don't believe that they are. The answer to between sending our children to Morehouse or to University of Maryland is not to say we're going to send them to Maryland because they're going to get a better education. Morehouse is ours. If it's not what it should be, we need to make it so. We need to make it better. The answer is not to abandon it and to teach our kids that what somebody else has to offer is better than what they have at home. That's the problem.
That's easier said than done. Mr. DeShiel, I live here in Sandtown, and upwardly mobile Black women really don't want to move to Sandtown. Upwardly mobile Black women,
Right.
from my experiences, and they're limited, prefer something like Owings Mills, Woodlawn. But here in Sandtown, do you know who does move to Sandtown, who finds value here?
Who's that?
White women.
Well, Donnie, I would, as I say over and over again. First of all, you say it's not easy, and I say who said it would be? There was nobody promised it would be easy.
And let me not make a blanket statement. There are Black people. I know a couple that moved from Randallstown, Black couple.
Yeah.
They moved just up the street from Union Baptist. I went to their home, a beautiful 3-story house right there on Druid Hill Avenue. The man said he got a lot more. He's a barber here in Baltimore. He said he got a lot more house than he would have gotten in Baltimore County. But we're all a part of that exodus to Liberty Road over the past 50 years.
Yeah.
And I love Liberty Road. I think they're the worst drivers in the world.
Yeah.
Pretty certain about that.
You know, Donnie,
let's
get back. I like to get back to basics. We all talk about the children are our future, and for sure they are. But let's look at the choices we make for our children, or rather the choices that we encourage our children to make. You and I know that NCAA Division I schools generate more revenue than the NBA and the NFL combined.
And add in the gambling, oh my goodness.
You and I also know that 70 to 80% of the athletes in the NCAA Division I are Black. We know that as well. We know, you and I know that the millions of dollars that Auburn and Alabama and Texas and all those schools generate from our kids, while Morehouse and Morgan sometimes struggle to get adequate bathroom facilities in the locker rooms. While every day we board buses and cars to run to the state houses in the various capitals of the states begging for a share. We file lawsuits by coalitions asking for fair and equitable treatment. But we encourage our children to go to Harvard and Yale and not Morgan and Morehouse. You see the dichotomy there? You see the problem with that? Now that's not to say, even in my own house, I got 2 daughters. One went to Howard, one went to Hopkins. One's practicing medical care, healthcare. One practices with me as a lawyer. She went to Georgetown Law School, not Howard University, but Georgetown. So we can't tell our children what to do. They will make their own decisions, but we have to teach our children what is important. And that's what's missing. Unfortunately, we teach our children in many ways that what we have as Black folk is of no or little value, comparatively speaking. We teach our children that if you have a choice, go that way and not this way. Go to Harvard and not Morehouse, as though inherently there's some benefit to us as a people from that decision, when it's not. It's inimical to our interest. If we lose, Donnie, we know from the civil rights movement. That when we lose Sampsons, when we lose Cesses, when we lose the Royal Theater, when we lose those things, we never get them back. They never, ever return. When they closed Salisbury High School, where I graduated from in 1966, and they made it a Votech Center, I never got to walk across the football field with my sweater on with my school letters. I never got to have that proud day in front of the group and say, there's an alumnus of Salisbury High School. That's gone, and that's gone forever. We can't allow that to happen. We will not be assimilate. God did not make a mistake. He didn't overcook us. If he intended for us to be white, he could have done that. And I'm going to trust his judgment. I refuse to live, and I encourage, I'm not going to live my life as though God made a mistake in making me black. I'm not going to do that. And we need to stop doing that.
So many thoughts go through my mind. I mean, you're starting with the NCAA, the basketball tournament, how much money is raised through that.
Yeah.
I mean, one thought I have, I don't care who the next super athlete is.
Yeah.
Because I've watched a good 20 years of athletes, 40 years of athletes come out of Baltimore, and I can't tell you one give back. And I don't mean just a summer tournament. I mean a building. How about new rec centers? And then it's this excuse, oh, they do things under the radar because they don't want nobody to know how much money they got. I watch what Cal Ripken is doing. And, you know, of course, we can't compare blacks and whites. But I watched Cal Ripken give back a baseball field to James Mosher Baseball. It wasn't until Freddie Gray happened that Major League Baseball ever went to James Mosher. We all can do better.
Yes. Yeah, and we all can, and it is our charge to do that. One day at a time, one mind at a time, one heart at a time. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. We only got one day at a time, Donnie. You know, so I'm not gonna burden today with yesterday, and I'm not gonna hamper tomorrow by linking it to today.
Well, let me ask you this: how are you receiving this new cadre of black elected officials? I mean, it's gotta make you smile when a governor's race is impending, coming out with next year. And Angela also Brooks, the black woman from Prince George's County, her name is being floated, and other names. It's got to make you smile when you can't talk about a governor's race and a Wes Moore's name or a Boyd Rutherford or Michael Steele. Is that progress?
I think it is, and I think, I don't know about anybody else, but more than ever, this time, I really appreciate the power of the ballot. I mean, when we saw what Stacey Abrams was able to do in Atlanta with the two black senatorial candidates, with two senatorial races, one black candidate, you know, the ballot, I'm convinced now, I should have been probably a long time ago, but I'm convinced now that the ballot is the key, if there is one, to our future. And I think that's why there's such a great effort around the country in Republican-controlled states and legislatures to impose restrictions on the right to vote, because that's the key. It's free. The voting is free. You don't have to pay anymore. Not because they didn't try, but poll taxes are illegal. That's our key. That is our biggest hope. But to be properly exercised, we must be educated. To be properly exercised, we must know how to pick the right candidate. To be properly exercised, for example, we need to get rid of institutionalized structures within the political system that are against our interests. For example, the so-called two-party system. The two-party system dilutes the voting strength of our own people.
Oh, there you go, Mr. Bob, putting a plug in for a third party.
I'm putting the plug in for having the people's vote count, period. And what I'm telling you is, we don't. Go ahead.
When they block us, that's how they keep control.
Exactly.
It's by design. They don't want us to have an independent vote in the middle of the primary.
Well, closed primaries are one of the biggest obstacles to the full effectiveness of our vote. It's not like the vote won't count, but it will count more if the primaries are open, because then we get to choose.
They figured this out a long time ago. You know, my book on Black Wall Street is just about finished, and I'm not rushing because there's some nuggets that I'm learning. When you go back to Reconstruction, 2,000 Black people were elected right after slavery.
Right.
And that's what caused the formation of the Klan, the White League. And let's not forget their number one political ally was the Democratic Party.
Which tells you the labels don't mean a thing, or shouldn't mean a thing to us
At all.
It shouldn't mean a thing. And what happened, what they realized, Donnie, was just before Reconstruction and during Reconstruction, was that the very thing that they had used to promote their financial interests, which was breeding Black folk, right, now created a problem because there was more Black folk than white.
Especially
that's why those 2,000 people were elected.
Especially in South Carolina.
That's exactly right.
And
that's
then
exactly right.
I think it was 1898. That's when they had the Wilmington Massacre.
Yes.
So for those who may not know, that's when they chased Black elected officials out of town at gunpoint. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, and what a great, interesting program you've been having. I'm trying to listen to it as I was gathering myself together, and to have the Honorable DeShields on there, it's still a great information that you put out, and I try to share it all across the board because daily you bring out information that people need to hear. And thank you, Donnie, for asking me to come from time to time.
Are you a white supremacist?
Not lately. No, I haven't been. No, of course not. I'm not, but I know of them. I know that back in '78, I was in North Carolina doing we were protesting about the Ku Klux Klan down there. And I had men right down in North Carolina who died right beside me, shot by the Ku Klux Klan. And the police department gave them our route that we were walking because we had a permit to parade. And they gave the Klan our route. And to this day, not one Klan person or police officer has ever been charged. So no, I'm not a white supremacist, but I know about them.
Did you know that Black people can be white supremacists too?
No, I don't believe that we can.
Well, if you're out there saying you better go get a Jewish lawyer, that's kind of part of white supremacy. Or if you say that Black businesses are no good, I'll never support Black businesses, that's a part of what Mr. DeShields, I think, is talking about.
Well, I just think that's just people who just, some people just don't. I mean, I don't know what. We can't always expect people to be like Donnie or to be like Brother DeShields or to be like Mike Johnson. Some people just don't get it. They never will get it. They come from a tribe of people that don't get it, to think Jewish lawyers are better than Black lawyers. My family from way back, and it's 11 of us, so a lot of us got in trouble a long time ago. They would always use, at that time, the Watts and the Russells and during the early days and the Murphys. But no, my family has always been aggressively in making sure that we support Black business, Black attorneys, Black accountants, Black real estate people, because I have to look at the mirror every day and say, what am I doing to contribute to the Black African American community? If I can't do it by my voice, then I got to do it by my economics.
Okay, so what else has been happening, Mr. DeShields, in the news?
Well, I guess there's been recently, a lot of attention given to what happened at the Asian massage parlors down in Atlanta, or with the lady out in I think San Francisco that was attacked, and those events have garnered a great deal of public attention over the last few days, as they should. but I joined the Asian community in protesting against those actions. But they need to understand. They need to understand that that sort of conduct is not new to our community, and they also need to understand that we have the same enemy. That
Have
the
they come
same
out to
thing,
support Black Lives
the
Matter?
same forces, the same underlying forces that cause that attack against those Asians in Atlanta and every place else are the same ones that you talked about that chase black folk out of Wilmington, North Carolina. It's all about it's white supremacy is at bottom of it all. And that's and which is the same reason why, for example, when they talk about people not wanting the vaccine, they'll spread they'll fill the airways with notions that black folk don't want the vaccine and we're afraid of it. They won't talk about the Trumpers, the Trumpsters, I call them, who refuse to take the vaccine because of Trump. They won't talk about that. If there's any group of folk out there who are refusing to take it en masse, it's those who support Trump politically. But you don't see the airways with it. Trump was right about that being fake news, but he was wrong about what the fake is.
This is a comment from Kelly Vaughn. I feel for them, but haven't seen them stand with us. I 1,000,000% agree. All weekend I'm watching people talk about stop Asian hate. And it's like, why are we the first to change our profile picture into this, into that? And when will we get to just say unapologetically black, wrong is wrong, right is right? I mean, this is not new. They are just involved now in what we've been dealing with. And let me just slow you down. I've been to Tanzania and I saw who was building the roads in Tanzania. Slow down, black people. Get a global perspective on what's going on. Who is really our friend? Or who's just trying to put their hand in our pocket and take our lunch money? Come on, Michael Johnson. Don't be quiet now.
No, I have my problem with this. There was a sister named Heartland that died in Oakland, California, who went into an Asian market and got into a beef with the merchant and took the orange juice and sat it up there. And the Asian merchant walked behind her and blew her back of her head off. That happened. And I didn't see the outcry. Okay, that's been 25 years. That was 1 week before. Okay, 1 week before the riots in LA, 25 years ago when this happened. But as a human rights person, I don't want anyone to be killed by white racists or things that affect that way. I do believe that there's racism in America has now reached its fifth generation. And this fifth generation is more armed. They're more dangerous. They have the benefit of more media. They have the benefit of more social media and all of that together. But as your point being said of who's our friend, no, I haven't seen the Latino community or the Asian community or a large percentage of the white community other than that watered down the Black Lives Matter movement as it originally was set up. But I haven't seen all of our friends. But as a human being, I feel sorry for the people who lost their lives and have to deal with their family and their widowers.
2 blocks from my house, there is a Korean-owned liquor store and an Arab-owned grocery store. I can recall a time when they were both, or at least one of them was black-owned. But I have gone to both of these business owners to ask them if they would help me to pick up the trash generated from their stores. And both of them looked at me sideways, like, are you kidding me? Now, granted, black people, the customers, are the ones throwing the trash. But I've gone to them as politely as I can be and said, you're making money here. Don't you feel like you have an obligation to help keep the neighborhood clean? I mean, what's it to pay $5 to somebody, hey, go outside and pick up some trash? So, no, I'm not going to be the first one out there supporting anyone but my own, because I've seen what others do. And then And then, Mr. DeShields, when a Freddie Gray riot happens, oh, then all of that slick talk go out the window. Hey, you my friend, you my friend. Help me get in my car. Help me get in my car. Save my store, save my store. When every other day is, you know, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Well, Mr. DeShields and I, not to speak for Mr. DeShields, but Mr. DeShields and I could tell you that that's a replay of the 68 riots. I mean, we saw that exact same statement from the Jewish merchants and the white merchants that were within our community, how they wanted to be more friends with the community when the community had civil unrest. My point being is that, you know, whenever we're ready to have that conversation about how we have allowed other people to come in our community to make substantial money out of our community, I'm ready for that conversation, because I do know one thing. Every one of the liquor licenses that were purchased from the Asian community, from either the Jewish community, the white community, and the black community, they paid a lot of money for it, and they will never make the type of money that those people were making back in the day.
Donnie, I suspect that there were as many threats against Dr. Martin Luther King's life from the black community as there were from the white. Dr. King was not accepted in Chicago, okay, by the black community.
Alabama.
The black folk opposed him. That's where I'm focusing on. Now what the other problem that we have is that we have not defined for ourselves who we are. We accept as black non-white. At least we used to be before it came up with the people of color thing. I that's a whole different phenomenon. But before that, not anybody non-white was black, and we accepted that as the definition. We can't do that. We are not monolithic in that respect. All black folk don't understand what it means to be a white supremacist. They don't understand that by not teaching their children to appreciate and honor, nurture, respect, and preserve those things that are ours, that they're really denying the value of themselves, their own humanity. They don't understand that. That's got to be taught. They don't teach that in the public schools. They don't teach that. They didn't even teach that at Morgan State University. You don't learn that. When Perry Mitchell first ran for Congress, the loudest voice against him was Dr. G. James Fleming.
That's right.
From Morgan State University.
What was his problem? What was his problem?
What was his problem? Folks accepted him as being black. But because he espoused the philosophy of white folk as it relates to black people in politics, they put him on television. And we accepted him as a people. We accepted him. We promoted him. We said we're going to listen to what he says. We said Perry Mitchell ain't got no business running for Congress. He'll never beat Sam Friedel or Carl Friedler. But he did. Now, with respect to the liquor stores and the trash on the street down there, look, yes, the business owners do have an obligation to maintain their property. But damn it, pick up your trash and stop throwing it in the street.
I totally agree. I got to blame somebody because, you know, when people throw trash, you know, I don't understand. You got grown people that just take bottles and trash. I've seen people throw it out their front doors, throw it out their car windows. And let me tell you, let me see an otherwise beautiful woman drop some trash. I lose it. How can you be so pretty and so dumb?
Down, I've seen people throw trash out the car window just before they park the car in front of their house. Okay? All it took was 5 more minutes and you'd have been in your house. You could have put it in the trash can. But I've seen them toss it out the window just a block from their own house. And I'm not talking about in the city now. I'm not talking about in Sandtown. I'm talking about in Randallstown, in Pikesville, in Owens Mills. Okay?
And I mean, joining in that conversation, I live in the city side of Pikesville. And I've seen it come outside, and there's a cup. There were people have taken their stuff, just left it in the parking lot. And these aren't inexpensive properties we're living in, and
Yeah.
taken it and just sat it down. And literally, I will go up and get it out. But that's just the way people are raised. People understand things. Everybody's not from the same village tribe that we're from.
That's
Some
right.
people aren't that they just aren't there.
Where's the black
That's
church
right.
these
And
days?
you're right about that. Go ahead, Don. I'm sorry.
Where's the black church these days?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't know where they are. I know that it wasn't until the yelling and the screaming of activists that I know who wrote letters to even the churches that we started getting even the shots. Those who decided to get the COVID shots, to get them inside the churches, even though many of the ministers had already gotten their shots. They weren't setting it up for their congregation. I think that there's also a difference. I grew up when Catholic churches, as well as the Baptists and the AMEs, the doors were open after school. The gyms, the little small. I played basketball at Union Baptist in that little round gymnasium up there.
Right.
Ran into the wall. Yeah, ran into the wall. St. Ambrose, another one. You run into the walls. You didn't care because you were young. But what it was is you knew the pastor. You knew the preacher. You knew the people who were responsible for this facility. So you respected it. You respected what they did. They married your family and buried your family. It didn't cost you to bury or marry. But now it costs you. There's no connection. No one's recruiting. One thing I used to remember Reverend Dobson used to always tell us to do: when you come to my church, bring somebody. That's what Reverend Dobson would always say. Earl Gilliard, my last pastor that I was going to church in the city, said the same thing. Michael, don't come to my church by yourself. Bring somebody. But I don't know where the new style pastors are, except when I catch on some of them online doing their services now, I see a lot of singing, different type of speeches being given, and all I hear most of the time is given. That's what I hear the church in, given.
You mentioned names. The names you mentioned took me back to my childhood. And Mr. DeShields, you talked about us and self-definition.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's almost blasphemous to say that we love those strong black men who acted like we know men to act. But now, 2021, it's almost like what we love and treated with respect and normalcy has been inverted. Back then, y'all told me y'all would get your butts beat all the way home, and then when you got home, you got your butt beat. But now it's the complete opposite. If you even look at somebody's child, don't say nothing to my child. And then a strong black man, if we say we admire Mr. DeShields, Mr. Michael Eugene Johnson, then somebody's got to throw in this other thing. The alphabets and all, as if we can't respect what we normally basically respect. It's almost anti-political to say we respect you, strong black men, without the alphabets coming into play.
But you have to look at when we say about what happened with young people, the way that young people were disciplined, that's when you had a community. And you had a community a lot of time based on segregation. Segregation gave us the opportunity to know more about each other and the ins and outs. Now people can move anywhere they want to move. There's your average neighborhood association, and Donnie, you know this just as well as I do. The average age of a neighborhood association president is 70 to 75 to 80 years old. The people that are moving, they're not moving in the city, they're renting the city out. The city is full of renters. So when we say communities and neighborhoods, we have to really be we have to put an asterisk beside that, because there aren't a lot of communities and neighborhoods that it was as when we were growing up on Dukeland Street off of Poplar Grove, or on Park Heights, and when we moved on Park Heights at the early stages. These neighborhoods don't exist anymore. They're full of transient families, bad schools, okay, as you were talking about liquor stores that used to, when I was coming up, and I always don't want to date Mr. DeShield's age, but when we were coming up, your liquor stores and your lounges, they sponsored the baseball teams.
Yeah,
that's what was on the back of our jerseys.
And there was synergy there.
But there's no neighborhood. There are places where people live. There aren't that many communities left in the city of Baltimore.
And you know, a couple other things. We started chasing grants. I don't know that in the 60s and 70s, y'all know better than me. I was a little boy. But today we're chasing grants. And the grants are controlled by 2 or 3 entities. And if you do anything that's counter to those 2 or 3 entities, you get blacklisted. So we've become more dependent on external resources that want to slap our hands when we're too unapologetically black. Or they say, oh, no, we can't fund this, or we can't. What happened when we had the Willie Adams and we financed our own baseball teams and bowling leagues and everything else, when the church was actually someplace we wanted to be? But then we get all of these rights and freedoms, and, you know, you got the black community is like, we got children telling us what's right and what's wrong. No child is going to tell me what's right or wrong. I'm not asking a 3-year-old, what do you want to eat? But that's where we are today.
And frankly, in my opinion, that's a further indication of the lack of respect that we have for ourselves. Mm-hmm. When the whole so-called civil rights movement was based upon accommodation, assimilation, acceptance, and tolerance. But we were always the ones that had to be tolerated. We were always the ones that had to assimilate. We were always the ones that had to, but in other words, the day started off not just with white male men in charge, but we were taught that that's the way the world was supposed to be and was supposed to stay that way. That's the problem. That's the problem. It wasn't just an observation of what is, it was a declaration of what was to be. That's the problem.
How is that worked out?
Well, yeah, that's why we don't have Cesses anymore. That's why we don't have Samsons anymore. Mm-hmm. That's why our children are looking around for leadership and they don't find it anymore. They don't find the people that they can be proud of. They don't find, where are the strong black men? Where have they all gone?
What did Georgia, Atlanta, what did DC, what do they understand that we are missing? Relationship.
When I was in DC, I tell this story many times. I love Marion Barry, all right, as many black folk did and still do. But it says something, and we had one thing that we both used to do. We always liked that little phony professional wrestling with Bobo Brazil and those guys. I forget some of the other names.
Andre the
Michael
Giant.
Remembers those names. Donnie, this was your time. Andre the Giant. Well, here we are in the back of the DC Armory, watching this phony wrestling, sitting up there with suits and ties and eating popcorn. 2 black men, me and Mary. What in the world? These 2 intelligent black men, what are they doing? What? It's all about, to borrow a phrase from my former pastor, P.M. Smith, it's all about relationship or it ain't about nothing.
Well, if you was hanging out in Memphis, right, see, you telling on yourself, because the only place he would ever meet was at a strip club.
Yeah, and that's another thing, Donnie, that I'm talking about. As I said before, I've yet to meet a human being that didn't have vices. Mm-hmm. I have not come across that perfect person.
But the people of DC loved him. They loved him unconditionally. What happened to us here? Why can't we love Or is it because of the
my dad, my
I'm
dad.
gonna leave that to Michael. I'm not from
Don't leave it to
Baltimore,
me.
so I'm gonna let him
But
answer that.
my dad, who would have been 105 this year.
I'm not from Baltimore, so I'm gonna let Michael answer that. What
you
happened,
close
Michael?
enough.
My dad used to always say, and he was originally from Chester, South Carolina, and we were the first generations of Northerners. I'm sorry, Donnie, about the interruption. We were the first Northerners up here, and he would say the problem with Black folk in Baltimore City is they've been free too long. And I would say, well, Dad, what you mean by that? He said they didn't understand the internal struggles that we had to do coming out of slavery, and you still in South Carolina, or being with the adverts racism in Washington, D.C. Because a lot of people understand that D.C. turned Black, but D.C. was a racist place for Black people coming up in the early days. And he would just always say that. And I just think in Baltimore that we just got to a place where freedom felt good, that we could move into the county 60 years ago. Black folk was moving into the counties. And so when we took all of the power struggle, all of the education, all of the things started moving out of the city, we then dissolved the neighborhoods as we knew it. The cleaning the sidewalks on Saturday with Ajax, the going to the churches wide open and listen to all of the choirs coming up and down Druid Hill or coming down Poplar Grove. All of that stuff changed. And it seems like we got that passport. And when that passport came, we left. We took the power structure with us. We split it up. Certain people held on office too damn long. And what happened now is that we have people who have no connection literally with the earth, with the groundswell of the community. They're just good. They're good campaigners. That's
So
what
I'm
they are.
hearing you say that Black elected officials forgot that they forgot the purpose of being in office. They got drunk with power, and instead of it being 2 4-year terms, they turned it into a lifetime post. I thought Elijah Cummings, with all due respect, would pass the ball before he died, as did Perrin, as did Kwesi. And I hope Kwesi will pass the ball before he passes on. That's how it's supposed to go, correct? Or
but white folk, in all due respect, white folk Donnie holds positions until
well,
you
you
roll
just
them out.
said that we're not white. You said that we
Well,
can't
no,
do what they
I know.
do.
I'm just saying that we can't. If we and I understand that if we're just speaking about Black folk, then my apology on that. But let's say this. I will agree with you. There have been many elected officials of African American descent in this city who've stayed in office way too long or did not pass it to the people. Because
Or
what
while
happened?
they were in there, they were empowering people like Bill Cole to be the councilman in a Black district.
Well, you still got a white councilman in that district. Ain't nothing changed.
It changed on Elijah's watch.
Well, I mean, we could pin the finger. You know, say it again, Donnie. I'm sorry.
The last councilman, Elijah gave Bill Cole a pat on the back he needed. Larry Young might have helped with that too.
I think that
I live right here. I saw it. Maybe I didn't see what I saw. Did I?
No, I think you saw what you saw because I think we can both attest to that. You and I, in particular, can both attest to that. I just think that we have to be really, really clear. There was a moment when we should have been having the bench prepared, and the bench wasn't prepared. We let Mary Pat Clark stay in office until they rolled her out, representing the majority African American community. You let Karen stay there, representing Morgan University and all of the Black folk around until he left. And so because of that, you have these young folks who I believe that they have the heart. I don't know if they really have the vision because they stay within their small groups of young people. And they don't, there was a comment made on a Zoom meeting I was at that said, have you paid attention to all of the white people that Brandon Scott has hired? All of the white people that Brandon Scott has hired are over 45 years old. All of the Black people that Brandon Scott has hired is under 45 years old. What are we to say?
Maybe Michael Haney said that Black politicians in Baltimore have superficial power.
That's a
So
possibility.
you gentlemen are not giving me.
What do you think that means, Mike?
Yeah, Michael
You
Haney,
know,
stop throwing pot shots
I,
from the cheap seats.
I think that Michael Haney, who's one of my closest friends, made a good point. Is that too many times we have black people in power and they're just there as a black politician. They don't really speak black power. I asked a question to a black politician. I said, "Are you a black politician or are you a politician who happens to be black?" I got no. He didn't understand the question. Because I just believe that black politicians should take care of black people. And I'm not saying that white people won't be part of the mix, but I always see what black politicians taking care of white folk. Always.
Your final thoughts for the day, Mr. DeShields, or
I think he's froze right now.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Mr. Johnson? Thank you for taking the time out. We've been trying since we talked to Mr. Haney. We've been trying to get him on this show, but he's like he's chicken out.
Well, Mike's a tall non-chicken, so I'm sure he'll come on up. But thank you, Donnie, for having this show. You don't know how incredibly important this show is, or you may know, because so many people I know that will text me and say, "Are you listening to Donnie's show? Are you listening to Donnie's show?" So keep doing what you're doing.
You're just saying.
Okay, I'm just saying that it sucks. Nobody really want to listen to it. Of course, I'm not just saying that.
Well, what is it that we can cover that's not being covered?
You can speak truth to power, Donnie. That's who you are. You can.
But we have other stations.
Let's leave. I'll leave it at that.
Your final thoughts for the day, Mr. DeShield, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. My final thought is
Giant has the sale like twice a month, $5.99 for a pan of Starbucks. But you know that is my getaway. I'm not gonna lie. I love to get away. Now, if we had a Starbucks in the hood, I guess I could enjoy it. But I enjoy the trip. You know, I got to see something different than Sandtown and vacant houses and white people.
I tell you what, the next time you and Mike drink Starbucks, the next time you want one, I invite you and Mike, and I would treat you to a blonde latte, grande size, not venti, because that's too much for you.
I like the caramel macchiato.
All right.
I don't drink coffee, so I'm good. Thank you, brothers. Appreciate it, Johnny.
Good deal. You've been watching another edition of BlackUSA.News. We'll be back tonight at 7 p.m. for a town hall. Mr. DeShield, suppose somebody needs to get in touch with him, well, just pull up Robert DeShield online. My name's Donnie Glover, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good day.